Hi everyone, welcome back into the classroom. Okay, today we're going to work on the main bighorn here, and I want to soften up a little bit of the mountain and stuff right around in through here, and we'll work on bringing him forward. We'll work on assigning some of those textures. I'll try to get as much as I can done in the next hour and a half or so with this video, okay? So first, let's come in. I got my same colors out, freshened up my palette. I'm going to take a 3/4 inch brush, a little bit of extender. Let's get some of this. I don't want to have a tremendous amount like right out through here. It's just a little too much movement and stuff. I want to, work some of these colors right in through here, especially right back through here. Soften them out. We're going to have a lot more done on the mountain, but I want to have some softer edges running up against the bighorn there. So I'll take some blue. This is our atmospheric, and remember we're right onto the violets and stuff as well over here, and then some nice light color, and I'll just model some of this together here, and the violets here. Let's see right about where we are with this. It's going to be a little light, but I want a slight bit of difference to it, so I kind of like that color. So let me just add a touch more violet to it here. Kind of like this color, some of it. I'll just use this to softly break up some of that there. Let's go a bit more, maybe even a darker bit of the violet here. Just a bit of the phthalo in there. I'm going to add some extender to this, and again, just kind of smoothing strokes. I want some of this modeling of the color. That's what's going to give the interest, but I don't want to get harsh edges. That's what we're going to avoid. So harsh edges. So I'll scrub this a little bit, and the scrubbing action gets rid of the edges. We'll still get some modeling. Almost, I always, I say modeling, and the modeling to me is kind of like a mosaic of colors. It's you see a variation of the colors. It's almost, thinking about it, it's almost like a marbleizing, but you don't have the harsh edges between the color exchanges. You want to soften those out, almost blend those out. I don't like to use the word blend because I think in the artist industry, especially since for me, I'm an alla prima painter, I think blending is overdone in our industry quite a bit. We rely too much on blending, and we should be using what we call optical blending. So it's a little bit different. We'll talk more about that. Let me break up some of this edge here. Just soften that out a bit. There you can see, and see that helps your eye focus in on him a bit more here. So, and a bit of this maybe towards the blue side, blue, violets down here, blue and violet right down in here, slightly different. So my goal is to just soften this a bit right where I'm going to be working on him today, so I don't have a competition between the two. So I'll soften right into here, soften this line back. I've got a good idea about how I'm going to paint the mountains here. So I just right around him, I want to blur out and soften him a bit. So the painting can be about him. Remember, the painting was about his subject and stuff. So I'm going to go in and paint probably a little more than what he did into the mountain. But that's my choice. And I'll do that towards the end. Okay, so I've got some of that. He will advance off of this area pretty nice. Just model that up a bit. See how you just scrub it a bit and you get the interest of the mountain with all of those colors, but we don't have the detail of the mountains, the smaller little marks. Now those, you could add a few of them in there, softer ones, a little violet, a little blue, a little burnt sienna, softer darks and stuff here. We talked a bit about that. That's a little too close in color to him, so I want to keep it a touch more violet, blue and violet here. And Remember we talked about that in the first one, that big mark that was right here. Let's just take some of that off. A little bit more to the darker violets here. And a few little marks that will look like more mountain stuff going on here. Right? Some of it here. And that'll be good. Maybe just a touch more blue. Vary the colors. And we'll walk some of this interest down. But I don't have, so you can see I have this modeling of the color. But, you know, like where you have a sharp line, like we can have the sharp line here, but it's still not sharp because I painted back and forth with the light and the dark to blur the edge out. And that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to have in here. And we're going to want to have some of this other mountain structure, which I will add in there. I'll come in with you and we'll really paint a pretty mountain, a soft one in here. We will do that, but I want to concentrate on getting him forward first. Okay, so that's kind of enough for right now. So you see, there's no holidays. I'm working him against this kind of smoother area, and then after we get him, then we can judge how much of this mountain and stuff, the edges and stuff, do we want to put on. This might be a bit much. It looks more like on the TV monitor. So I have my monitor right here that shows me what you're looking at, and it might be showing up a bit more than what I'm actually seeing here in real life. The thing is to keep it kind of soft. You could just take a little water and run through it. Keep it soft right now. Okay, so let's go in and let's start working. I'm going to use a smaller brush this morning, and I got this big old thing I was working on. This is my idea for applying some of those heavier textured colors and stuff. And so I have this idea. Now, I want to come in a little bit closer, and I have basically a nice color here of him. And I want to put that right up here. So we'll have, let me excuse my reach while I do this here. We'll put this up. Maybe straight here. Oh, there we go. And so we'll put that up. We'll have this to look at and compare him to. Normally I put these side to side here with you guys, but I want to blow this up, and so I want to have room for the palette here as well, right? So I want to blow it up just a bit, and I have it on the big monitor back there too, so you can see back behind me. That's what that monitor is, and you can see how crystal clear it is on that monitor. That's quite nice there onto the monitor. So, and then we'll come in just a bit here, and so that'll give us room to put a palette and stuff out there, so we can keep him, so we can work on him, look at that one and work on him, and put a palette over there for you guys, okay? And you can blow it up bigger on your TV or whatever you want to do, but that'll get us a good shot here. We could probably come in just a little closer here. Let's bring the camera in just a bit closer. Okay, maybe that still leaves us room there for the palette. So let's just bring this down a little bit. Here we go, right in there. So you can have that. I always find, when I'm painting, and you've seen those of you who have painted animal portraits and everything with me, I generally like to have them at the same height. He's off a little bit, that's okay. But the same height, so that I can look across and see if there's, if there's something wrong on him or off on him, I can work on that, and fix it up. So this will work. So I can just look up there and see. I also have it up on the big monitor. So I'm going to take now smaller brush. This is one of my favorite ones that I use. It's just an old number 2 filbert. It goes in, it works great for some detail work and everything. And so we're going to go in and start. First thing I'm going to do is take a touch of burnt sienna and some blue. And I'll use my stick here, and I want to come in and I want to oval up his eye a bit. Now, I use the older brush because I don't want to create ridges and everything with that. So I'm going to oval up his eye just a bit. And I don't like to create ridges, so I'm going to take some burnt sienna, maybe a bit of my yellows here. Nice, lighter, warmer color that I see and mark right into the front of his eye there. And then a touch more blue, burnt sienna blue, maybe even a little violet cold. It's dark to the lower right corner at about 4 o'clock, 4 to 5 o'clock there. A little darker color down there, okay? Some of that dark can be used to make his tear duct tract here, down this side here, right like that. Make sure we get those marks in. And again, like I told you yesterday when we were working on this, I like to carry some of those colors. Whenever I make a color, I like to carry it and you know, use it around in a few other places. And he does a lot of scrubbing color. So, and get used to doing that. He likes to just, you know, use that brush and kind of, and the actual technique is called scumbling. And in the 17th century, they scumbled with light colors, and then artists started scumbling lights and darks. What a lot of the wildlife painters will use is the, you know, heavy strokes. So like if you can look in through here, you can even see right here where he left that heavy stroke of dark and scumble the edges on it. And usually you would scumble over lighter color over the edges, and that would, and you keep scumbling back and forth like that until it gets a little bit softer. So, you know, and that's just a way. So you would come in here and you would scumble in, and using an old brush, and bristles work really well for this as well. Gives you all different kinds of work, looks to it. As I come in here, I'm going to get rid of some of this dark here so we can work. I want to work the warm side, so I'm going to have some warm colors here. Warm side, I'll just grab some of my warm colors here, right down here where I can look at them. And then over on the other side over here, I'm going to take my neutral there and some cooler colors here that I'll use over onto this side of him here. So I'll have warms and cools that I can work back and forth with. So, you know, I'll look if I see a nice drawing or darker color that I want to add, like right here. I'll start by adding the darks. So whenever I come in to work on a place here, like through here, I'll start the darks, working in some of the darks that I'll see, like that little line of dark that's right there on him, right? So if you're following, so I'm looking up through this area, some of these marks that are here, there'll be another mark here, I got to put that in, and I'll look right around the exchange here of his horn stuff here. So I need to get a bit more dark and, you know, model that in there. So change your brush as you're working this. This is a neat little number 2. You just kind of scumble this color around there, and it works great. Now, there will be more specific tones. So once I put in the dark, then I look for a mid-tone. So here you'd see a mid-tone, a tiny bit lighter. So maybe I'll even grab some of my mid-tone. I'll use the beige to burnt sienna as a mid-tone. Maybe just a bit of the burnt sienna in it, and I'll put that little angled arch there, that mid-tone, some of that mid-tone, or what you'll see me call this in other paintings, halftones, little halftones. Halftones sit halfway between the light and the dark. I took out too much of that oval there, okay? And I'll reset. So I'll come in looking for the mid-tones. So I go to the dark tones, the mid-tones. Where do you see the mid-tone sitting? And this is how you know that he does a little bit of scumbling. See, you see the canvas, the roughness of the canvas, picking out some of the edges here of his subject. And that is what tells you that he's using his color kind of scumbling. It's not a thick mark of color. And then I'll move from there over to some light tones. So I'm going to grab some light, maybe a bit of yellow into this. I like the yellow oxide. I like to have a dirty palette that I can just run around and look at. There's a lot of artists that like clean, mix the color. So I'm the opposite. I like a little bit of dirty mixing up a bit. So let's take this light mark right here that's going to really form the socket there, or the big bump above his eye, the upper bony structure there. And see, I'll drag this, and I'll drag that across there like that. If I need to, I'll back some of it out with my halftone, right? Some of this back in through here. Let's round that mark a bit right here. Maybe just, and I don't, you know, you can scrub if you get too much of an edge, just scrub the edge. But I want to leave some of it here out, a little heavy, a little textured, especially into the whites here. So I'll go a little heavier, and sometimes I change the handle of my brush so I just get that mark. That's what I'm interested in, that mark. You're looking right at there. I'm just slowly lightening it up and just redressing that mark there. Coming back down, leaving just a little bit of shadow right up here in front of the eye. There'll be another mark right there. And it'll go a touch lighter, so it'll pick up a little bit more light, hit that mark. Some of that will come out down that line there and break down that way, right? And we'll darken it down a bit to the halftone. Let's put a halftone right down in there. I took out just a touch too much shadow, so I get the opportunity of putting it back there. Now, he leaves it very much, you know, those halftones and stuff. So in some places, like right up in through here around the face, he'll leave that really harsh. Here, I'll just scrub the edge a bit. That softens it. So right in here, you see a smoother exchange. That's a scumble. So where you see a smoother exchange of color, that's where he's scumbling. So where he's here building a bony ridge and stuff like that, he's doing it more as a mark. But when he's out into here, where he's looking for a bit more softness to the color, he's going into a scumbling technique. So he's thinking about the structure of the face. And here I'll just tap into a little bit of dark so you can scumble back and forth and get that blending. Don't do it so much that you lose it, the blend, but works really well. We can put a touch of that violet. He likes the violet in this guy as well, and you'll see that in there. Let's go a bit lighter, a bit more violet. This is going onto the cool side. Some of them are blue violet here. Okay, and so you'll, after you see him for a while, you'll start to see some more of these violets. But you got to remember, you know, his head's turned there, so you're going to see some of the violets. I'm just going to establish some of that violet right in here. I see that in him as well. So I'll push some of that violet right in here where I see it. And some of that warmer tone right here. Now you can, if it starts to dry up, and this is a little bit on my palette, I can just add some more extender to it. So, but I can just tap through. Don't lose all your color marks. We want to have marks, these bony structure. And so we want to leave some of these marks in there on his face here. Which are going to help us give the appearance of this bony structure to him, right? So down through here, so I have that mark. So I start out with the dark, so I can put a bit more dark there, and go over here, grab a bit more dark, a bit more here along the bottom. And if I, you know, those of you that paint with me all the time, you'll hear me say, the one thing that I do know about myself is I like to paint too much, and then I like to push it back. So I like edges that go crossing over each other. So I'll paint too much, realizing that I'll have to take some of it out. Okay, that's the way I like to paint. And especially with his scumbling, he's fairly similar to that. This is just a little burnt sienna, touch of yellow, just putting it in to help me get some roundness and stuff to his face there, right? And I can direct this mark here a bit better, a bit heavier. It gives him a little more bony structure. So if I leave a touch more of an edge, he'll get just a bit more bony structure. This needs to come a little wider right there. Right in there. We'll soften that just a touch. Let's get that bony structure in there a bit more. A bit more of this into the back side there, ovaling up his eye. We didn't worry about that yesterday. Today we'll worry about that. Let's get some of this dark right up in here and around, right? Some of this beautiful dark burnt sienna and blue. Some of the beautiful dark. So you can hear a little line here, right in there. So you can see it's starting to build more contrast in him, which is what I want. And then you can see as this dries, so that looked like that was going to be pretty light, but in actuality, as that's starting to dry down, that's not quite light enough there. So I'm gonna restate it, but I'm gonna restate it with a slightly different color. This time I'm gonna use medium beige, a little yellow, a little white here, and let's restate that again, right like that, to put that structure in. And then maybe drop it down a little medium beige and touch of the violet into that. That's a pretty color as well. A little bit more light, a little bit more structure, and he has the paint itself is a little bit drier. I'm a little wet, so I get the stroke is a little smoother. His is you see a granulation to it. It's kind of like, you're looking at little pebbles. That tells you that the color that he's using is drier. It has less moisture in it. He's an oil painter, so it has less medium in it, less linseed in it, less oil, and so the color skips over it. I can add some of that a little bit later. I'm worried about getting some of the tone, the structure, and then I can come back and add some other stuff to fix that up. But let's get some of that light. Let's get it up to where it should be, right back up towards this top, maybe a bit more light. And so his lights is that. See that right there? That's a granulated mark. So as my brush runs out of color and I drag it over the surface, see how it picks up just the high marks there of it, and that's the granulation. That's what we're going to be doing into his body. I'm going to be doing that. I'm not going to worry tremendously about it right now because I'm going to be going back and doing that. Let's get some of this nice warm scumble back through here. Get rid of those holidays. There's a few little holidays there. Let's grab a little burnt sienna. Touch of blue. I should have put this in first. Here, help us round that over again. Right there on that horn. And then we'll come back a little bit more dry. Add some of those marks. And then I'll let the paint dry out even more right here. Now the other way to do it is this, which is, I have it out for this today's painting too. This is the acrylic thickening medium. And so I can take a dollop, just a little bit of this. Doesn't take very much of this at all to do anything. As a matter of fact, I should probably mix this up a bit, just a bit. We'll put some of that out. I'll keep it right there. It'll stay out for quite a long time. But you use ever so little of this, just a tiny touch of this, and you can see instantly. See how it starts to dry up this paint, and it'll thicken up this paint. So I can grab this and thicken this up. I really like to thicken it up with my knife because you can really see it. You can see, boom, see how instantly how thick that starts to become, right? So this, you can see it's like a little paste now, see? It's like a little paste. And so sometimes I'll grab that if I really want to get the effect of it. A bristle is really a great brush to use. The Fusion here is a little softer, but as this starts to tack up a bit, this will work. You just drag this. You see how you get that light kind of granulation look to it. That's what that is. That's how you get that. So the paint itself is thicker. So, you know, in all the lessons that I've really been running with you guys here this year, more than anything else, I've been getting you to concentrate on the thickness of your paint, right? We've been spending a lot of time in a lot of the lessons. Doesn't matter if I'm painting for spring or what. I've been concentrating with you guys on the thickness of your paint because that is so very important to a lot of what we do. So I can grab a little bit of this, add that to this thicker paint here, and just granulate that over the surface there, like that. We want to keep this bit of an arch here to it, right like that. A little bit of an arch. I can accentuate that with a bit of shadow, just coming down like that. So that gets the sections of his horns here, right? That's what we want to get. That feeling in there, right in there. Scumble this back as it's, see, it's so much fun to manipulate this. And it feels that, boy, that thickness of the paint, you can feel it in there, right? So I'll take this thicker paint right here. You can see it just dolloped right on the end of my brush here. And I'll just drag it right like that, right through there. And that is what creates that look here. So, and it's really, really great. Now that'll dry a touch darker, so I'm not going to touch it. So I'm going to take a bit of that light though, and I'm going to touch it right in here where I see some of his thicker lights and that mark that pulls down. You can see that thick light draws that mark really easy. Let's just swing this right around like that. A little bit of moisture to help it travel sometimes. So, you know, watch the thickness. So a little moisture causes that travel there, right? Better. I'm always working on the consistency of my paint. In chemistry, we call it rheology, how the paint flows off the brush and in contact with the surface. And that's constantly what I'm looking at here. And and I love the study of that. So I'm going to, now see, this is starting to dry up a bit. If I add just a touch of water to it, it'll come back for me. I'll pick up a bit of blue right into this. And I'm just going to soften that mark right down there. A bit of that in there, right? And I like that. I've lost just a touch. I'm going to go bit of burnt sienna and yellow oxide, just a little bit of that up into the front there. Okay, it's a bit big. I always do. That's just what I do. Take that back a bit. We'll add the catch light. Let's just go ahead and add the catch light. Not pure white. I'll take it here, tap it off a little bit so it's not completely pure white. Just a little bit grayed off. We'll just add a little catch light on him there. Okay. And again, I always get that a touch too big. That's what I do. And I'll take this in here, just very carefully touch up into it, push it back into place here. So that's right about what I want there with him. So I get this couple of color tones to the eye. That's what I'm looking for. I want to reset this dark right up next to that catch light that gives a good contrast. And a little bit more of a light yellow, some of this burnt, touch of burnt sienna, white, and beige here. Let's pull this eye right around again. Maybe get a bit more heaviness, even some of this thicker stuff with it. So I get just a little ridge there. That gives even more interest there to his eye. So, it's planning it out. So now right in through here, I'll start looking through how is the relationship between my half tones. So this would be the lighter tones. This would be the darker tones. Right in here would be the half tones. And you got to make sure that you have some of these half tones in some of these areas. Like he's got one pulling right down there that helps that eye, soften that eye right in through there. And you can hear, I'll have a little bit of violet with it. Let's just add that in real quick right in there. Just a little mark, leaving some of that dark and stuff in there. And you'll see that those darks and then the bit with the halftone just really helps. Let's get some lighter, maybe a bit of violet, some of this. Let's build this up right around that horn. This will advance the horn. Pulling down, that puts the side plane of his face there in a little better. I could have it a touch more violet, right? Here. Really kind of fun. Let's get that just a touch more violet here. Yeah, that's right it. And we'll just drag a bit of that through there, right? And maybe a touch more, maybe even granulated a bit. So you just drag it lightly. Let it just hit the highlights there, right in there. And I'll look through some of these softer little halftones in here. There, right in there. That is, could be a touch darker. And I don't mind mixing again. Spend your time to find the right color. We spent all this time on this painting so far. We don't want to ruin it by just grabbing the wrong color. So we want to make sure we get that. Now, I'm going to scumble in a little bit more dark right on that edge to soften that effect right there. And so I just lighten the pressure and scumble a little bit, right? And let's get some of this beautiful, I love the burnt sienna and the yellow. It's a kind of a glowing little color. And I like that on some of that on him as well. So now you see we're getting that structure all in there. And I could have a touch more of this light structure here. Little beige, yellow, right into where I had this thick paint. Here, it's still thick. It's still pretty darn thick. And let's just pop that in one more time there. Right like that. And then I'll half tone right along it here. Just to soften some of that. Direct some of that line there. That builds that up. And he's a little more granulated than I am, but I kind of like it the way mine is. I'm going to put a little bit more of a mark right here above his eye. That's too light, but that's okay. Because, I do like it, that light, but it's not quite his. So I'll just drag a touch of the dark right through it, right through that top edge there. And push it back a bit. And I'll let the rest of it, kind of dry down and see where it is. But this is really a touch too light right in there. So we'll just back that in right like that. That looks better. A little bit of dark. So I'm just reading the colors. And when you're starting a new area, start with the darks. So let's go back and restate this dark right in there inside his ear. Let's bring this horn back down. Right down into here with that dark, right into that area there, right? And that really gets a nice ridge here. So if you want to build that dark, he builds a nice ridge. If you want to build that dark right in here, drawing that ridge of his head and eye socket there, we can build that up a bit more. And yeah. Then a nice, softer half tone. Not light, not dark, halfway in between right in there. And touch more dark. That burnt sienna blue is just perfect. Sometimes a little violet in it. Just perfect little darks. Right in there. Here, that's his head, so we'll push that in. And then there's a half-tone light that is the back of his body there. So a lot of beige here. That's the back of his neck right there. And mine's a little bit darker than his. You can see that, right? So I'll just lighten it a touch. A little bit of the lighter orange. Just lighten that a touch more. Right in there. That's pretty good. And yeah, we'll use some of this down through here, this light. And you can scumble. Let's scumble a touch of the dark right in here. See how it can go right into that light and those halftones, right over it and soften it as well, right? But we could take some more of our dark violets and blues here. Add a bit of extender if it's drying on your palette too fast for you. Add a bit of extender, and always remember, it is always better to have your shadows a little thin anyway. Shadows should be thin. So let's scumble this in here, right? And we'll take this over here, a little bit of burnt sienna and beige. This makes your mid-tones, sometimes yellows. Burnt sienna's beige, some nice mid-tone right in there. Scumble and let it soften out there, right like that. Could have a touch lighter right up here through, creating that's the cast shadow from the horn. So, and we want definitely, he's very particular about certain things, like this line. You could physically see on his painting there, you can see him taking a stroke right here of light across that edge and then running right up next to it the line of shadow on the horn, creating that ultimately that edge that causes the horn to advance well above the face and his neck here. So this is going to be a perfect little line of texture and edge right there, and that causes that horn to advance. So those are the kinds of things that I look for. And then coming out of that, on this side up here, we're going to have a bit of the halftone right up there. The bit of that halftone is going to travel all the way up through here. Little marks of it, right? Little marks. Get used to making little marks of it here. Right like that, okay? And some yellows, some mid-tones here. Right through here. Right in that area. Some lighter tones. Step off. We'll give some light. Some beautiful marks of light here. A little rough sometimes, and a little more granulated. His colors, when he's painting those, are a little more dry than what mine are right now. I have still a little too much moisture in them. I could draw them out, or I could let this dry and do it. But right now I'm kind of happy with it. I kind of like the way it looks. Let's put the roundness to the tip of the horn right here. So that will really help that pop off a bit. And I'll look, you know, I got that nice thicker little light up there. Right in there. So, but on the horn, you'll see a lot of little marks, granulation marks. That just shows he's coming back with his brush like this and texturing and hitting the high points of the texture and putting some of that dry paint on there. And it's like the little sparks, the little sparkles here. So Yeah, and it's a great little look. He's got a beautiful technique to his painting here. And I could have, just as this dries up, see how it granulates now as that's drying up? I don't have a lot of wet paint underneath. You can see that granulation mark right there, really easy. I don't have a wet paint underneath, so it's dried up, so it granulates easier. So you just, and that's what you do, you just scumble over it there, granulate over it. Let's go a little more burnt sienna. There, that works pretty good. Now, very important little one too here. So certain ones you'll put in very detailed for structure, right? So like right in through here, okay? And that's what you look for, right guys? You look for little things of structure that are going to keep the anatomy to your subject. So one right here. So this bends right in here. But you got to remember here, right here where we put this down, I want that nice big thick paint, maybe even tap it a little bit here to get some ideas of that structure there that is there in his eye. There's another one right here, and it bends up to almost join right here, and that's where that eye socket is, right there. That's the other side of it right there. So it's bending up to join there. Now, you know, again, I paint too much and then I go back and push it in. So I'm going to use some softer color here to help draw that one right into place here of where that is. And that's the other side of this one. And we'll put a half-tone yellows in there. Maybe a little bit of the light coming down here. Break that up a bit. Right in there, right? But that's that structure. Now, I don't have it moved in here smoothly, so it's gotta flow up a little bit better and up and in there. That's like that, right? So this would be that bump there, and that into that one there, and a bit of the dark right up there to help see it, right where that is. And that's a touch dark, but not bad. I love to put it on there and then evaluate it. Let's take some of the dark down this outside right here. That'll push this part of the horn back behind there, right? So we get some of that in. And to me, this is a part of painting I just love. I love to find the little bits here. Then we'll go back, since we took out, we'll go back and put in that ear over there, the tip of the ear. Maybe a bit more dark into it. Right, so just like that. There we go. So in some areas, like if you're doing a cast shadow or what we call a form shadow. Okay, a cast shadow is an object casting the shadow onto something. So right in here is a cast shadow, okay? Up over here is a form shadow. So form shadows are generally softer than, so you don't have as much harsh of an edge. So if you look at his form shadows that he has, like onto the face up here where the white is, they're softer. And those are where you'll use your halftones and your scumbling to start to soften some of the look up there. So we'll put in some medium beige. I'm going to come back here with some light and redirect the light and just scumble that in there just to soften some of that right there. Sometimes I'll leave the little marks, you know, that we're all different. Some of you might like the softer, some of you might like the more harsh lines. It's yours. You can do whatever you want. We're just using his as idea, as a stuff. So, but paint what you like and find your, I love to study the masters, but I don't like to always copy them directly. If something inside of me says change it, I'm going to change it, okay? I mean, because ultimately it's mine, and I like to do that. So I'll push that in. And as I soften and build, so I'll go back with a little more light here, maybe some of this thicker stuff here. little more light right up here onto the tip of the nose and push that in. We'll soften, scumble a bit there, right? And see if I can get that front ridge that he has right here dropping down there. And it just it becomes very soft up there. So you can see where his is, look at it like this. His is soft, mine's a little bit harsh. I have a bit of texture on the edge of it, which is giving that harshness to it. And so I look at that and it's like, I need to just soften it down. So I'm going to take a bit of the beige and stuff that I have. Sometimes I'll do this, wipe back to remove that texture and then touch the edge of that with the beige, which then softens it out. And then I'll redirect it again. I'll start walking the light back up towards that beige edge until I get the look that I want. But that other side over there is what we call the form shadow. It's the form shadow right there. Okay? So, and that's the difference. So the form shadows are generally, especially in the wildlife and stuff that we do, a little softer. I'll put a slightly softer right down on the outside edge there. Right? I like that. A little bit more shadowy dark right down underneath the nose and down into this V shape a bit as we set that nose in there. Right? Maybe, so a bit of this softer half-tone form shadow. Scumble that in right there. And then let's build our light back up again. Right in there. And touch right to form that jawline. Soften. Tap, tap. Right there. It tapped a little out of place and took his smile away. So I just put it back right there. That's good. A little heavier into the light, which he builds up this front part of the nose, which is really important because this is a forward plane coming at us as the viewer. So we do have to build that up. And then he goes into a softer half tone right in here. And then up that side just a bit, tapping through, letting that come off of that right there. That's pretty good. So you can see it's really kind of a fun face to paint in here. Grab just a little bit of the lighter here. Medium beige mostly. It's a good color for that. Just gently draw the lower jawline here and let that just tap out. And you can scumble it down. I'm going to grab a little beige and a little blue. Excuse me, a little burnt sienna, a little blue. You can scumble that down or just slightly darker underneath. And so that builds the lower jawline. And then we'll come up here with this kind of fun. I love to, it's, one of the reasons why I've really fallen in love with painting portraits, trying to capture the expressions and stuff like that artists get, and learning which marks create what expressions and stuff like that. I've really enjoyed that. And it helps me refine my observation skills. Does that make sense? And that's what we're ultimately trying to do, guys, is we're trying to learn how to see something and what it is that we see. We can all paint it if we can see it. And I believe that. I have so many people that say, I'll never be able to paint the rose. That's a bunch of hooey. You just got to learn how to see it. And you've probably got a habit or two that is impacting your ability to see it. We just got to figure out what that habit is and get you through it. That's all. It's hard when this is a one-way video, when you're just watching me. You need to get some paint buddies to work with and find it. Let's just scumble on a little bit of this. We can go a touch darker here. There. And let's go a bit more blue and some violet. As I get into real deep shadows, I do like that nice and cool with these violets here. Really like to go over towards those violets and stuff here. Nice, and you can see it makes a little different color. Scumble that on so you can get some of these different colors going there. Draw into that a bit. Soften out that jawline just a touch, a bit more, not completely dark, a little beige and a little of that dark. Right in here, let's really define up the lower jawline here. And then that's a touch too harsh, so I'll soften it. He's softer on his transitional. That's right in there. That's called in portrait painting, we call it a transitional halftone. It's right between even the halftone and the full tone there of that area. So there we go, just like that. That's just kind of nice, getting that. He has a little bit more of a drop down into the bottom of his jawline here. It drops down before it rises up just a bit more, so we'll put that on. That's not too bad. Maybe some of this up here, take a little yellow and the white here. I could have just a mark or two of slightly lighter here. That little mark could be, I thought it might be too light, and it turns out I'm going to end up lightening it up again here. Just a bit. Little taps. You come in to do these little taps, little lines there. Little marks. And then he gets into some of the, so we got these violets. And then we're gonna start to add some of the. I might as well just do it right now as well. So let's get this violet in here first. A little bit of the violet, bit more of it in here. That could have a touch more. Let's go with the slightly darker violet here. Here we go. And just warm that edge. See, I love this. Just the color movement in the exchange of the colors going across there. That shadow up there could be scumbled down a little heavier. See, that's the scumble, just back and forth just a bit. You're not looking at blending, and then this is the mark. So if I'm doing a structure mark, I do this. So I'm putting in the structure right there. I'm putting in more of a structured mark. The scumble is a quick little movement. So I'm putting in more marks right there, directional marks that are setting the shape or the structure of his face. And then the scumble is the softening mark that we use to soften the color, the exchanges, right? There's a difference. So this one here, and boom. I like that real dark right here. Let's just accentuate that one more time. Right in there. Come out right there, round up into that horn. And a softer, little more beige, rounding down right into there. There we go. Right there, and I'll build his the line of his forehead. So you can see I've taken 54 minutes, an hour into here just painting his face. But overall in the painting, on a big painting like this, that's not bad, guys. Shoot, I know a lot of wildlife painters that will spend, literally 3-4 days onto the face, building the colors, and each time you put the next tone on, you register another color, another tone, or a different way, and your eye slowly starts to see more and more and more into the painting. And yeah, we do that. So that's pretty good. That works pretty good into him. I could have I lost just a touch of that warmth down below there, so I'll just put just a bit of that. I like that. So I like all of that right down in there. I could now some of this warm half tone. Put a little glowy mark of it right in there. And let's scumble in some beige and burnt sienna to soften that into place. Here. There, like that. Some of the darker, deeper shadows here. You can see those nice cast tones. It gets a bit more blue right in here. A bit more. He even puts these different tones into his cast shadows here. So now as I get up into his body, so I used this small little brush because it's a great way to get a lot of marks on, a lot of movement of my marks. I'm just going to add that right up in here. And I got to see that shadow. Let's look up at the big one there. Sometimes go back and just grab that big one. Just glaze over that a bit. Right like that. Back and forth. See, that really helps it. Just get this blue and these violets here. This nice deep shadow. We'll start out kind of wide right here and then draw it right down around the corner. See, that's the granulated. See how it's just leaving little, it looks like little granules there. That's the granulated stroke, and that's what he does a lot. And like this, he'll just bring that edge in. Up here's a little smoother, but that brings that edge in. And then you can scumble this like this. Right up in there to create that modeling here. And that just looks great. Now, this brush starts to, I'm going to say, it still does the job, but you have to work a little harder. Does that make sense? I'm going to go up here to a number 4 Fusion Flat, and I'm going to work some midtones here. And we'll push this on right in through here. Just boom, boom, boom. See? There we go. And then I'm going to take some of that back. Just like that, see? And don't take it all out, but you just push it right back out in place. And it's this push and, I call this the push and pull of colors. I do it in a lot of things. I do this in oceans, I do this in westerns, I do this in roses. I'll push on the light and then I'll push it back with a little bit of dark. Slightly different movement, so I create that movement, that soft tonal movement inside something. I create it inside of roses and stuff like that. I'm going to push a little more dark out here. And see, I can put that on, and then I can take that light and just break it up a bit. Not all of it. Don't take it all out. Just break it up a bit there. And that works really well. Some of this little light, he's got a, I start looking for little details of stuff. And do I want to put on the inside of that ear right there, the mark of it, and maybe just a quick little mark. Little things like this, guys, make huge differences in your painting, right? Just take the time and find them. Let's add just a touch of blue to this. Nice dark. Drag this, granulate. See how it's granulating? It's not making a full stroke because I have the color really dry. And I'm just dragging it over the surface and getting that granulation that he likes. Maybe a bit of, and see my colors right in here are getting drier. See how there's not a lot of moisture here? So as I'm painting through the day here, especially with this, my colors are drying up and now I'm getting the look. And so I start out kind of wet, and now I'm getting more of the look that he's using, that he's getting here. And he's got a nice little chip, a broken edge here into that horn. And some granulation going up over the top here. Here, a bit of dark on the inside right here. You can see how the paint's dry. It's not flowing into a smooth mark. And so everything here is getting drier. And that's when it starts to really go, and I'll just work that. I can add moisture to it, but the paint being dry is really nice. So there, I'll just whisper that off a bit here. A little bit of just very light pressure, just let the paint just float onto the surface and come off in that granulated mark. Here, like that. And so it's drier. They're really fun. It's really fun to paint this. You know, looking for those granulated marks. So see here, my paint's very dry. Now watch what happens. I'll just light pressure, just drag it over the surface, and I'll get that granulated mark. Now a little further down than what he has. So I'll just take some of it out with some of the mid-tone first, and then into some darker tone into my brush, taking some of it back out again into position. That's how I love to paint them. That's how I love to paint them. And it's just a little off right in there, but I like it. I might give that secondary little dark mark in there. I kind of like those. So let's get that secondary little mark in there. And so down through there. So now, if I'm doing a cast shadow here, let me just put this shadow. Oh, shoot, I touched that. Thickening right over there. Boy, howdy, you got to get that out of there. Boy, that'll thicken up. It'll even thicken up water, so it'll thicken up everything. So make sure you're careful with it where you're on your palette. Let's just, this is a glaze, a thin application of the color. That's the shadow, right? So when I come back over to your shadow, matter of fact, that's drying up really nice. I don't want to contaminate it. So I'm going to take some of my blue and some of my burnt sienna here, thin it out over here, and just scumble around in here. And I want that kind of thin right in there. Soft edges. So we'll just kind of come down soft edges here. And I won't take the entire time here that it's going to take to paint everything on the body. I'll just show you how we're going to do. First, we're going to come in and we're going to redefine our structure shadows. So here we have a nice big form shadow that's coming from our light source into his big muscle groups here. So we want to make sure we get this form shadow here. It's going to go this way, down his arm this way, down his leg this way. Here, some nice structure of his chest is going this way. So as you're scumbling, don't just make sure you're still following good anatomical structure with it. So here a little more blue, a little darker, maybe a little violet into that. A little darker, let's make sure we can see where that line is, that shadow line is on his leg there, where it's joining up into the body. So you see it ever so slightly there. A little more blue. See it ever so slightly there. This one, this chest muscle, because there's a big muscle right here. And so we want to kind of give the idea that that neck comes right down here with a soft little, let's just blur that out a bit. So you can see that it's all in shadow, all in cast shadow, or form shadow here. And then you can kind of see that that neckline would come down right through here. Here's the chest, widening out to the chest. And he does a really pretty job of it right in here, of building out that chest muscle with the marks coming this way. And you can really see it if you put it up onto the monitor. So up onto the monitor here with the printer, you don't see all of the subtle little changes, but you see the blues and stuff that are over there onto that one. And so that's why it's good to have that up on that big one there. So you're you know, if you don't have a big monitor, to put it up on a computer monitor or anything there to see that we want to have an idea here of that throat right there, just a slight mark of it, right? And that could come a bit farther forward, joining that one right in there. That's good. And there's taking a real dark blue, violet, might even just be blue and violet by itself as a real dark purple color to help you really get these darks. So we're going to have some darks, real darks, right in there. And a little extender. I always like the shadows a little bit thinner. Some nice dark right in here. Just a quick little mark of it right there, right? But you have this kind of arched curve of that big leg muscle there. And just like on a horse and stuff, this joins in right there with that one, right? And some of this big muscle, the line of this big muscle. And we'll leave a touch of light, and then we'll hit the shadow mark here, coming underneath. Now, he even leaves some of the dryness to it. So in here on this photo, you don't see it all to there, but boy, you look over onto that one, you can see all of his structure marks really clearly. So I'll be looking over to that one to see he's building a shadow underneath the knee, which will happen right there. And then just to bring that back, let's, oh shoot, I hit that thickener again. I just might have to move that over here a bit more, because I need to use it still, but I'll just move that over there. Let's just be careful with that, Dave. Let's get some of our blue and some of our violet and some of our lights here, right? And it's going to be lower tone, mostly blue, and I'll darken it down. Let's use it's dry. See how this is kind of draggy right here? It's dry. So I have this very dry right here. And I'm going to scumble this right down over this edge. So you don't pick it up in here. You can maybe see a little bit of it. But over on that one, you pick it up. See? And so that's why it's good to have a couple of references right here. So we'll just drag that right there. That puts in that line, that beautiful line of his neck, that powerful neck. Maybe just a whisper of that right along in here, just to say we did it, right? Just a touch of that. And we'll have a few marks, just light, he just touches it, just the confidence that you can look at this and see the confidence in his marks is just amazing. Just amazing. So we'll push just a bit of that mark right in there. There's going to be a bit over here. It's a little soon right now, but what the heck, I'm going to just put that in. You'll see some of those marks that are going to go in there, and that's just going to be magnificent. And then I might, if those lights are going in there and looking pretty good, I might put a little heavier right here onto his jawline, right there. I might accentuate it a little bit more. His is just a touch more violet, so I could push a touch more violet. Just glaze it over it. And some of this coming right in there. Dry. So your paint's got to get dry so you get these granulated strokes. That's what we're looking for. So you go this, you just drag a little bit of it over that. It creates, remember in all the paintings and stuff, I always say I like the little sparkles of stuff. So I'm looking at, where some of that's coming in. Those little sparkles and stuff that are there. And I like that. And just a touch of the light, some tan. These are all my midtones. Some of this light right in here, dry, and just drag over that a bit. Right in here. Like that. That's Yeah, scumble that just a touch. Scumble that brown, burnt sienna, medium beige, some blue, which will gray it off. Just some light, just so you're not all completely dark. Just hit a few lights here, just to break up some of those smaller marks. So, and let's get this all, because there's a lot of you that get confused about color terms, and color terms are really important. And, you know, and so I'll answer that. Over in the academies, I'm going to be putting a chart of color terms through. So when you're looking at something like this and this is what we would call reflected light. And so reflected light's normally a little cool. I have that just a touch warm. That's okay that you have here. This would be, you know, into the light area. This, of course, is into the form shadow. When you put a shadow and stuff on here like this, and then when you add these secondary tones, so some of these blue-grays coming into this, those are, that blue-gray is, not only is it a reflected light, but we also call it a broken color, okay, a broken color. A broken color sits at the same value that an area is sitting on. So I may have, so this will be broken color. So I have this here. I'm just going to lightly, that's a little bit too light. It's going to dry darker, but that's just a little too light. Slightly different color, but almost the same value. It's a little light, but that's okay. And this is called broken color. So it breaks up a solid area. Broken color breaks up a solid area of a color. So up here, let's just take some blues and the violets here, right? Up in here, up into his cat's shadow from here, I might break some of that up like he did with the little marks of those blues and stuff, and that's broken color, broken color right in there. So, and he's thicker. I mean, you got to remember that his guy that he's painting there is twice the size of what we're painting here. So you're going to see a lot more in some of what he does than what I'm going to do here. But we'll see some we can get. It's big enough you can get some of these nice works, lights in here, little marks, little sparks and marks and stuff in there. And so we'll just put in what we can here. And I will come back. You know, I'm going to come back towards the end of the painting and do this again. Do like this. And use this broken color, little reflected light color to sketch some of the anatomy on him. So that's what I will use. Now, let's set a half tone. So I look at my tone, the changes of my color right in through here. So here's a half tone. I'm going to darken, or I'll wash over this edge slightly to soften. I did it too much. So I wanted to show you again. You know, sometimes you're just like, oh, wow, that looks really good. And you take one more stroke and you go, shoot, I just lost it. I do it too. We all do it. And we call that painting. So I just didn't want it quite that harsh, but right in there like that. Okay. Let's look to the back while we have some of this beautiful color in. So we're going to have some of that right back here. So see how scumble. This is scumbling. And then, well, I have more of an anatomical mark. So see that right up there? See that softness? That's scumbling. And then this is drawing in the more anatomical mark. That's making this shoulder, the more that's making that whole shoulder come forward more. I need that mark, that line. Does that make sense? That makes the shoulder come forward. But up to here, I'll thin, I'll add a little bit of extender, I'll lighten right up in here. And this is scumbling. So even though it's a dark, traditionally the word scumbling meant the application of a light, the broken color applications of lights. And of course today we do it with lights and darks, but you know, like the Dutch where I first learned it was all the lights. But now I do it light and dark. So now I'm just going to break up and start to scumble his body, looking for some of those shadows here. And I looked through certain things, like I looked to, so he scumbled on and everything, and then he came back and added this dark later, and the dark came on as a mark, but then he just went on and softened it. And that's the pure essence of the confidence that he has when he's painting his subjects. It just shows that mark, he left that there. Most of us would go, what the heck with that mark, and soften it out or whatever. He realized it's a mark, but it's not hurting the overall effect of what he's doing. And sometimes going in and fixing it will add more trouble than just doing it. He quickly evaluates whether or not it's going to affect the whole painting, and it doesn't. And so let's get there. So I start with the darks, right? And so we'll maybe push that in. Let's push that in a little bit darker. Right in there. We'll get that in there, right? And then he has some violets, some nice soft kind of violet colors, blues, violets here, right? We'll have a bit of those in on, especially on the changing, the color changing areas, where you're changing from one hue to the next. But if you're using the same value, and this is right around the same value, see, it's a slightly different color. This is called broken color. And so on horses and westerns, I use broken color all the time. This is a little bit more blue than what he has. But so I'm scumbling now to just break up some of the other tones and add some broken color. His is just a touch more violet, and it can go on thick or thin, but you can just drag it out here so it's kind of thin. That's how I'm going to do it. And I might, some of you might enjoy a bristle a little bit more. I love the fusions. They're my favorite brush, so I tend to kind of stick with them for a while. I'm going to draw this down and around a bit, a little bit of light, and hit that mark down there. But you can see it's starting to get those granulation marks as my paint gets dry, and I'm working it up here. I'm not adding, you haven't seen me reach up there and add too much. I've added a little, but too much extender or water or anything like that. I'm just reaching up and grabbing the paint. I can add a little bit of extender from time to time, help keep it wet. But I'm working mostly the dry, right? Mostly the dry. So we'll just work some of this shape. Keep your brush moving in the anatomy of the guy here. Round this up a bit. So we keep that structure going to him. That's the most important part. The structure. So on the front shoulder, right up and through here, they're powerful. They're powerful up in the front. They have a big flat plane up here, right on the front of the shoulder. And so we have to take some of these downward marks. And that's really what this shadow right here, this whole side shadow right here is accentuating this big shoulder muscle that's right there. And there'll be a light here coming from this side here, and a little bit of violet, blue, beige, violet here. And that'll be the light, and we'll push some of this out this way, scumbling it, right? And touch into, if you get something too light and you touch into here, I'm looking for the soft, little subtle shadows. See, I can soften out that blue that was there. I look for the soft, subtle shadows. I'll come back in. Let's add a little softer, lighter tone, maybe right in here. And then I'll soften that out as well, right? Sometimes I'm definitely not going to paint the bigger one with this little 4. This little 4 is one of the things I'm at the point where I need to start thinking about changing the brush, because I'm having to work too hard. I want to set these planes with just a few strokes. I don't want to set it with a whole bunch of marks. you know, because a whole bunch of marks is going to make it look too smooth. And that's what's kind of happening here. Starting to look a little smooth, which means I need to increase the size of my brush, which gives me a more powerful mark. So let's go up here. Let's go, I'm going to go up to like an 8 here now. Blues, this, a little bit of violet, right? And I'll build in. See that more powerful mark? And I can get those edges. See how much more interest gets into that? See how smooth it is right here to here? See the interest of the marks? That's the bigger brush, right? And so I can drop that mark in here, edge, right like that. Bring that in. A little bit of thinness, just a little bit of extender. I don't want to dry, I don't want to wet up my paints too much. But I do like the shadows, always the shadows, a little bit transparent. So always, so here a bit of the shadow. Here, working that shadow, working those marks. Here, some just touches of those marks. You can see that starts to add more interest, right? And then let's go up burnt sienna, some yellows. As we get into some of this body, let's get some of that yellow in there as well. Get some of that glowy little yellow in there. And you can scumble the edge. Just boom, 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 the edge. Tap into the edge. Don't blend them all back and forth. Be very specific. And this is what I mean, okay? And so I want you to pay really close attention, guys, because a lot of us will go in there and pound the color. And we've gotten so far here, so we got to be a little careful. So what I'm going to do is this. When I come in to make a mark, I will make the mark. Does that make sense? Boom. There's my expression of color. Now, I don't walk all the way into my shadow. I'll destroy all of my shadow. And this is why many times if I'm going in next, so I put on the mark. The next is to look at how soft the edges are of that mark. Some marks I'll leave it. Some marks I will then wipe my brush, take most of it out, and I'll do one little softening mark on it to look at the edges. And I'm just pulling the edge to soften the mark. Does that make sense? So right here, I'll pull back this way to soften the mark. And so I take the mark off edge. Does that make sense? And so you can get the power of the mark, the softness of the edge. But if you come in there and go like this, you'll destroy your whole shadow mark. Does that make sense? So you make the mark, you soften the mark, but you don't drag it all the way up to the next color. Righto? And so that's the biggest thing about artists is they paint too much. We put on the color, we put on the mark, and then we look, how do we soften that mark? I'm going to come in here a little bit more burnt sienna and just look to soften. I can soften it with a shadow. I can soften it with a light here. As I go to the shadow, I start to go a little thinner. I like thin shadows. So I'll soften this in. Don't pull all the way down through that yellow you did. You got that yellow in there just nice. Let's not. And see, this is scumbling now. I'm scumbling it in here to soften that color to break up some of the other tone that's in there. Does that make sense? Now we have a bigger shoulder right here. I'm going to thin this out. Big shoulder mark. Maybe just a touch of this beautiful Diarylide, which causes a bit of a glow. This is that big shoulder mark. Let's re-accentuate that big shoulder mark right there. And it'll fold up right into that. Right there. A bit of this color can come right in here. Right? And I even have a bit of it pulling down this way. But then we'll go back to some of our softening stuff. We'll go back. That's all dry there, so I get the joy of mixing it again. Put some beige in it, some of that color. Let's just soften some of this through here. Some of this nice reflective color right in there, right? And some touches, maybe a little beige and white and some of this here. We're going to put the textures on it in a moment too. So some of these lights right in here. We'll put the foundation of those here. And it's going to be harder for us to emulate what he's doing with those lights with a body here that's half the size. But I'll show you guys what I'm going to be doing. So once I start to get really close, and I'm getting closer to the shape that I want to have. So here I'll push this mark in, I'll soften. So look at all these beautiful tones that are now carrying on this guy. Now once I get that on, then I'm going to come with it. And I found this. I started working with this one, and I like that. And I'll take some of these light violets and some white here, right? And they're really, when you look at it, these are the real sparks of it. So, and you can do it a couple colors, couple values here. I'm going to use this light violet, and I'm going to thicken it up a bit till it's nice and thick, right? See that color there? It's nice and thick. And you can even add extender to this so it doesn't dry out so fast, because extender can thicken it out. I've showed you the thickener in so many other videos and stuff, how we use it, but you can look, see how thick that is. That's like paste. And so you can add some extender to this so this stays wet. This will stay wet for a long time, right? And I'll look for some different colors of it, but look how thick that is, right? And then, you know, depends on your bristle, you know, how much your bristle can hold, but I use just the little hairs of it here, and that's what drags down and makes the marks. And you can see you get your, so what you're thinking about now as you're dragging this, we're dragging this thicker color, and I'll just drag some over here. This area isn't really ready for it, but see, I can just drag, and see how I create like little hairs and little marks like that? This is what he does. And so he will create the little lights and sparkles, and you'll see them coming through. You'll see that that's right up in here. This area is really ready for it. So you'll see little sparks of it right up in there, and you can use just a point of a couple hairs here and just drag and touch little sparks. And I know it doesn't look like I'm doing much, but yeah, I see them clearly. These little tiny sparks that are creating the sparks on him. And I can add a touch of the yellow burnt sienna to it here. Let's go right up here. Dirty it down a bit and add some light and dark little sparks here. But try different thicknesses. All of us will be slightly different depending upon our hand. And so I'll pull in like this and start to set in some of the shape, especially the form shape on him, right in there like that, to start to set up some of the form shape. But look how thick this is. See how thick this is, guys? That's the important part. So it drags over the surface so you don't get a blending of it. The little hairs are applying it, and that's what's creating it. Now, you can, like I can smear it out like this and create a more opaque area and then tap it out, right, to thicken it out. Sometimes you'll do that. He'll do that. Like right in here on this point of this shoulder, he'll go a few times to make it a little heavier and then tap out from it to make it a little lighter. Right? And so it's a great little technique from that. But after, let's just say you get too much, because that happens, right? We all do it. We get too much, right? And here we go. I'll take my other brush, like my little 8 here, and I'll take some medium tone in there, and I can paint in and tap into it, and I see in several areas, especially like right up here, he set it, and then he set a shadow right through it to take some of it out. And it's just magnificent what he does. Really neat. And so here, like I have it going this way. Well, the actual stroke plane is going this way, so I can change some of that direction right in there like that. and set. So you can see that that's rounding down. Mine's coming across, his is rounding down. And so you can come in with these little glazes, especially that little Diarylide. You'll look right up in there and you'll see this wonderful yellowish glow. That's like the Diarylide and stuff that's just coming in and doing that. And so we'll soften some of that here. Push this in. We'll push these shadows in here, down. I can drag over and take some of it out, just like that. So it gets it more of that hair look, right? So here I'll push this in this way, and then we'll go more of that lighter burnt sienna. We'll go lighter burnt sienna, which is the light color here on him. Right in here. Push that edge in. Round that down a bit. Always following the form strokes on him, right? That's what I'm doing. Following the form strokes. A burnt sienna and light. Really nice, beautiful light, because the light's hitting him right in here. Right, so here, like that. Right, and I want to be able to, lighten up some of this hip here. Right down through here. Just scumble that down through there. Right, and redress. My dog. Sorry about my dogs that are in there. Snoring away in there. And we'll redress this shadow. So this is that's an anatomical mark, right? And then I can come in and just soften the edges of it. I'll leave the mark, which is helping say, there's the shadow on that hip. Does that make sense? So, boom, there's a shadow. Then I'll soften it out a bit and leave the rest of that. Some of this right in here, just drag in. Get that nice movement there. Into that hip, some of that deeper shadow right down in here. Right, and up this way. But I'll work all of this. Right, I'll work all of this. And so some of this you might take out some of your violet colors or something like that, a bit of the yellows and some of these other tones in there. You may want to, let's go back to that violet. Back and forth on some of this. It's okay to go back and forth here. And you build it. Let's go back. Let's put in that's going to be too blue, so a little bit more violet right in here. Let's set this plane in just a touch more violet. There we get, that's a beautiful color on that. Oh man, I like that. And so I can push in, even like this, I can soften out some of that, the light marks that I made, soften them out and go back and touch into this again. See, it's staying wet. It's going to stay wet because I put extender in it. Okay, so I can push that in and then come back and touch some more of the lighter marks in there that I want to hit that little high, that little bit, maybe a little bit heavier right here on that hip right there. And sometimes just tap in the top of them and just little marks here. Few little ones here. We go. And we'll drag some of this light. Could have a bit more orange in it, and you can also glaze it. So if you get your color off a bit, you could always just add a little glaze to it. But I could take some of that beige and some of this light, put that into this brush, and drag that through as well. All of this works, and having a few of these bigger brushes like this work really, really well. And what he did a couple of times is that he built up, and I'm going to do it on the big one. I will build up a lot of texture going just a few of them, and you look at it, you go, wow, it stands very proud of the surface, some of that texture. And I'm going to do that on the big one. When he's 3 feet high, I'm going to be able to do that, like crazy. So, and so some of it will be a little more focused, like he has a little more focused line right in there like that, but you pick up that fractured highlight right there. And it looks really good. Right like that. Little marks here, that just little highlight marks on him. Dragging down sometimes. But that's how we're going to do that and set that up. But you got to get all those undertones, and you can go back and reset him. Okay, make sure you rinse this little brush out really well. Some brushes, like the ones that I show you where we do modified techniques like this, where we do grasses and stuff, I do more things with. But we want to rinse that out. A bit of the yellows and stuff in here. We can get some fractured edges here. Very yellows and whites, right? And then some heavier whites. You can even take some of these grays, so it's really thick. Just thicken it up and tap some of that through, and it will help you get that granulation edge onto it. And or just reach off the top. See, if I reach off the top of my acrylics, they've been out here, what, an hour and a half, right? And so they're dried up on top just a little bit. And so I can just grab some of that light right in there like that. And that looks pretty darn good. We're putting on the light of his rump. Now, I'm going to use this for a plainer stroke right here. A little bit more light. A little bit more light on the tip there. Some of that's just a bit soft. I want a touch more light. That's it'll dry down too. Touch of light right in there. I love to leave more of a mark. He does a lot of that scumbling and letting the canvas pick off. So like the lights will drag onto the top rise like the mountains, and the shadow will settle down into the valley. And so you get a lot of a crossing, or they're crossing each other with the grain of the canvas, and that's what creates the softness. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Or you can do this and just work it back and forth a bit. I'm going to work just a touch of my blue violets into that. But I'm going to work some more on this whole thing. Nowhere near done. I'm going to do this a few times. Work some blues into some of these tones. Break up and get some of this different colors, the half tones in there, the broken color in there, different coloring, right? And I'll work that, but just like what I showed you, you don't need to see every single little thing, but see how that just starts to break it up, right? And I'm looking at what is it that I'm seeing on his, some of those violets and stuff, and you don't have to have it perfect copy. Remember, we're using this, and this is really, the way to approach this is, you learn his brush and some of his techniques, and you let that kind of change you, evolve you as an artist, and giving you another pathway to your creativity. But you don't need to copy everything, And I've watched the masters, even today's masters, like when John Howard Sandon painted the master, the Lady A, which everybody paints, Lady A from John Singer Sargent. It was fantastic, but his was a little different because he has his own character, his own brush into it, because he's different. But his knowledge and his confidence comes out in that brush, that you're just going to do that. Yeah, like in through here, I'm crossing a little softer. His is a little bit more pointed, a little bit more direct of a shadow line that's in there, and I can do that. I can push that color in and do it a little more of a direct line than what he has by bringing the two together there like that. But I don't worry about it that much, but I'll do it this time. But see, I don't really need to, copy him that close, because then then you might as well just be, copying 100% of his. The goal of all of these studies is to use his brush to change and evolve your brush, right? His techniques that he did, learn them, and use those to affect changes in your brush. So that went up too high, so I'll just put this back down like that. That's a pretty good look for that rump area, I think, in there. But I'll go in, I'll put light back in here in the shadow, and you can see all of that in there, and I'm going to work it again and work I got some more darker shadows that you see right in through here. So see, this is almost the same color. You can see some darker shadow line marks, and I'll just be adding those, looking to those, and then when I get really close, doesn't have to be perfect close, but when I get really close, then I will flip over and start to add a little bit of the textures to it here. A bit more of the textures. Work some of that in, right? A little point of this shadow right up there like that. And work these shadows a little bit darker right in there. And yeah, fun stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed that. This is and I will probably change the techniques when I go to paint the big one just a bit, because it's bigger, and I'll be able to, put in some other little details and stuff like that to him. So overall, his coloring and stuff is pretty good. He could be a little lighter. I'm gonna probably boost him up a little bit, especially like right in here. I could have, and I'll judge that hip, because this hip is closer to the light source. So that's where I'm going to be judging my color, is in this hip right here. And so I'm going to probably build this up a bit more right in here, that light. And making sure I get this nice light back there. So, and I'll build this blue and this light back in there, here. And see, it's these quick little marks and scumbling and stuff. Fun stuff, right? So I might come through, I'm going to let it dry, might come through and lighten some of this again. His is his is perfect, okay? I've seen the original. It is stunning. But I want mine to have even a little bit more contrast, I think. Just because I'm around a bunch of painters here that really like that. So I'll put a bit more blue right in here. This is the broken color. See how it's changing that tone just a bit? And I'll work these tones a little bit more violet right into that. So I'll see that mark, I'll work that violet. You can, now when you look at this, you see more violet right there? You see that orangey color in the violet? He's just, and the more I look at his stuff, the more magnificent appreciation I get for him. He's just a master at it, putting those colors together. So I like that color. So I might, even though I have that texture there, I can just push it. I can bring it back. It's easy. I might come back and lighten him up just a bit more, because I can, right? Okay, so does that give you guys a good idea here? I think I will. And see how he looks. Yeah, so those of you that are starting out, you might start him out a little bit lighter. It's up to you. Or if you like the darker, more contrast one, that's up to you as well. So he's just a beautiful subject. Okay, so that's how I'm going to do it. And I hope you enjoyed that one. I will bring back with one more video. We'll come in. I'll use the same kind of techniques over here on the other little guy, but we will do him a touch softer. Let's step step the camera back just a bit, and you can see what how he is standing out against that this mountain here. So in the next video, so I'll go ahead and paint this one here with the same type of techniques, but softer and adding the atmosphere just like we did there. And then the next one we'll come back and paint the mountain and some of the foreground and stuff like that, and balance the whole thing. Okay, so if you like it, okay guys, make sure you click the like on that video. I know I've got to do flowers and stuff like that. It's been 3 weeks since I've painted a rose, and you know, a lot of you say, oh, you know, some of you, not a lot of you, some of you say, well, you know, you do a lot of roses. Roses are the #1 by 4 to 1, the #1 most popular thing I paint on the channel. So that's one reason why you see a lot of them, is because people request them. There's a lot of people that want to know how to do it. But I'm going to show all of it, okay? We're going to get to them all. And so, because I love painting these as well. And I believe as artists, when we cross genres, we learn even faster. If you just practice a rose, you'll never learn the rose. It's some of these other little techniques that give you ideas for roses and stuff. So we're going to do it all, okay? Thanks very much, guys. So make sure you click that like button. Make sure if you haven't subscribed, you go click that subscribe. Leave us a comment. Comments help the distribution of our videos a lot. So just go over there and leave a comment, okay? And I really appreciate it. And I'll see you on the last one here. I'll try to finish this up today, and we'll get the next one up in the next day or two, okay? All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you on the next one.